Welcome. This presentation is brought to you by the Faculty Development Committee, as we were talking about things that everybody needs to know, and managing disruptive personalities is a big part of what we do. None of us have any disclosures. So anyway, I'm Jim Whiner. I'm the chair of VM at Hennepin in Minnesota, in the University of Minnesota, and I spend a lot of my time as a chair dealing with disruptive personalities, as we all do. Now, we work in emergency medicine, where we see everything. We see every kind of person. We see every kind of disease state. I went too far. I can't even keep on those sides. That's okay. But all these people have different personalities. And personalities end up being a big part of what we do as we work. I saw the coolest piece of research yesterday. A third-year med student was presenting a research project, and they had these little ear sensors on people that said the heart rate, and using heart rate variability as a measure of stress. And she followed emergency physicians a ton, and wrote down what was happening to them. And they went back and looked at the heart rate variability and compared it to what happened to the person. And they actually found that the most stressful thing for residents were mostly centered around patient interactions, and the most stressful things for faculty were centered around consultant interactions. The interesting thing was it wasn't high-risk procedures, it wasn't patient volume, it wasn't death, it was interactions with people. We all see that. So if you think about your last 5 shifts, there's no way you didn't have one, and that's what eats at you when you get home. And you try to think of, well, I should have said something to that guy, I should have said this, I should have done that. So what we're going to talk about is simple strategies for that moment. When you're right there in the disruptive situation, how do you just get through it? Because that's what we need to do. We need to keep getting our work done, right? So there's a million different kinds of irritating. There's a million different kinds of being disruptive. You don't actually need a different plan for each one. Because if you really look closely, all these different ways people can disrupt an interaction, and you look really close, you start to hear that there's certain lines of intent that you can pick up. So when somebody's acting a certain way and talking to you in a certain way, and it starts to feel not right, you really have to look close and figure out what's the intent of what they're saying. Because if you don't mirror their intent or acknowledge what they're trying to tell you, it's going to escalate, right? So you're taking care of a sick kid, right? And the dad's at the bedside, and the dad's like, you're doing this all wrong. I looked it on Google, and they told me exactly what you're supposed to be doing. And the radiologist that lives across the street from my sister says you should have ordered this test already. You're doing it all wrong. What you want to say to the guy is, I know you're feeling self-conscious because you should have noticed your kid was starting to feel sick over the last few days and you didn't, and now you're here. But stop bothering me. You can't say that, right? Because first of all, nobody likes to be psychoanalyzed publicly, right? It makes them mad. So you just can't do it. And second, if you're wrong, then they're really going to escalate. But you can say, the kid's so lucky to have you advocating for him. You're a great father. And then you can kind of pull them back and say, but we really need to focus on getting this right now. And that works really well. So that's what we're going to talk about, some simple techniques and 2 essential skills, blending and redirecting. You guys know these, use them every day. You can't be an emergency physician right now. Blending is just kind of mirroring what you think somebody is trying to say to you, and you can tell if it's right, because they may bond with you a little bit. And if you're wrong, you keep trying different things until you start to blend with them. We all do that. Redirecting is when you try to do something that's different than they're doing to pull them in. The risk is, and usually when I look at videotapes of bad interactions. We have videotapes in our resuscitation area in our ED. And when people get in a fight, I pull out those videos and look. And when I see what went wrong, a lot of the times, the ER doc tried to redirect the consultant. And they got even more, they escalated their behavior because they didn't feel like they were being hurt. So we blend and then we redirect. And when you do it in the wrong order, right? If you start with, if the dad's yelling at you as you're over the kid's body, and taking care of them, and you start with, we got to get this right the first time, they're just going to keep arguing with you. Until you blend, so you acknowledge, you hear what they're saying, they're not going to be ready for that. So breaking into 2 big areas that are really easy to pick up while you're interacting with someone is their assertiveness. Are they aggressive or passive? It's obvious, right? Body language, tone of voice, super easy to pick up. The second is their focus. Are they focused on tasks? Are they going to focus on people? This one's a little harder, but just see, what are they talking about? Are they talking about you're dumb and the guy on the street knows more than you? which is people focused, right? Or are they talking about tasks like this needs to be finished now, this isn't being done right, this isn't right? But you have to listen to what words they're focusing on. Now you put these two together, and you have a spectrum of interactions. So here we have task focus at the top, people focus at the bottom, passive on this side, aggressive on the other, and everything in the middle we'll call the cooperation zone. People are acting normally. We all move around in this circle all the time, right? Up in the top, you're trying to get it done. You want control. Down at the aggressive people focus, you want to get appreciated. You're looking for attention. People focus and passive, you want to get along. You're looking for approval. And task focus and passive, you're trying to get it right. And you want to get it perfect. And these are all normal parts of every conversation we all have. But we all are trying to express this in the way we communicate. When a person doesn't feel heard, or they're scared or anxious, something new happens, they can start moving out into here where it becomes disruptive. Out of that area where we all have normal interactions into that disruptive area. And then our goal is first to get them to stop moving out by blending, and then to use the opposite to pull them back. Right? So if all somebody wants to be approved of and to get along with you, approve of them, tell them you'll really like them, and then say, but we got to get this done now. Right? So that's kind of the gist of what we're talking about today.
So to try to make this useful and relevant, we're going to talk about some cases, try to illustrate some situations that might seem a little bit familiar. So this is something that we've all seen before. You're kind of keying in your sepsis bundle, patient's hypotensive, you're headed for pressors, you're keying the resident up to do the central line. All goes well, right? The resident setting up the central line, and then the attending says, look, taking too long, pushes him out of the way. Not good. What do you do in this situation? You're the other faculty member on, you're the senior resident who the resident comes up to, you're the person who has to mentor that faculty member. What do you think of this situation? What do you do?
Just for starters, I'd ask, for details on what they felt happened and, the step-by-step process of where the issue was.
Absolutely. So, there are two sides to every story, but what's happening? Was this half an hour it took them to set up for the central line, or was this really like they were just kind of too aggressive? And this kind of comes back to the rubric that Jim pointed out, where in sort of the top right you have these people who are like very task focused, but there's this blend of aggressiveness. And so we kind of think of it as the tank, the sniper, and the know-it-all, if you will. The tank is the person who's, they're the bull in the china shop. The ends justify the means, and they are going to, steamroll anybody in their way to getting what they think needs to get done when they want it done. And it doesn't matter, how they're trampling on somebody's education, or maybe they're not even doing the right thing for the patient. And the trick is, like Jim was saying, it's like, you can't argue with the tank, right? They have the armor plating, but what you can do is try to redirect them. And especially like, bouncers like talk about like, you want to avoid the fight. In the tank, it's that situation where you want to try to redirect them and say, look, I know you're advocating for the patient, but we got to think about the resident, and you got to try to redirect them in that calm tone. This is like the prototypical situation where you're never going to be able to shout the person down. So it's that redirection, the Jedi mind trick, if you will. The sniper is the person who's sort of the one who's going to use the resident's weakness. They've only done 2 central lines. How am I supposed to? This is that put down in front of the crowd, the person in the faculty meeting who loves to use that moment to point out the fact that you didn't do that thing that's like third on your task list and didn't give you the opportunity to do it beforehand, that put down in front of a crowd. This is the person where like when you are going after a sniper, you got to flush them out of the brush, right? You can't find them, you can't shoot back at them, so to speak. So really it's about trying to redirect them back to, look, we're all on the same team, we're trying to all get this done, let's work together. And the people who are sort of the snipers looking for attention versus the people who are really trying to sort of are more worried about the task is an important differentiator, because if it's a task-focused person trying to enlist them and helping you just say, look, let's just get it done together, versus the person who's really trying to look for attention and trying to find ways to say, well, that's right, it hasn't gotten done, but none of us did it, and let's work together. The know-it-all is the person who already knows what you're going to say before you say it, and doesn't listen. So rather than trying to kind of beat them at their own game, again, doing the lateral, using the opportunity to sort of say, well, I know that this is the way you've done it, but can we look at this new way, this new research paper that talks about something different, that says, look, we're all focused on getting the sepsis bundle done, but when you give the resident that extra minute and you try to coach them through it and ask questions and say, what can we do to get this done now because the patient's unstable, it's sometimes better, and you do have that opportunity to open their eyes to something different. Case 2. This is the patient who needs an ED thoracotomy. The trauma attending's in the room, and the only thing that will work of all the choices, of all the sutures in the hospital, is the 1-0 suture, which in our era of supply chain issues is what you don't have, right? And when everything is going well, it's the trauma team, the trauma surgeon who stepped in and saved the day. Whenever you don't have something or something's not going right, what is it? It's your ED. If your ED was better run and you had what I needed, then everything would be fine. Right? It always shifts back on us. How do you deal with this one?
You're right, sir. You're right. Here's a secret I got.
Okay, you can cover up the 1 on the packet and say, oh, look, I found the last packet here, and you just pull it out and do absolutely. And this is tricky because it's somebody that you have to work with on a longitudinal basis. It's not the parent that, you can sort of make peace and part ways perhaps, but, this is sort of the relation. It's sort of still on the right side of the rubric, but this is the person who has sort of more of that people focus and aggression rather than really the task focus, because at the end of the day, like, does it really matter what suture it is as long as it's sort of the right size? No, it's more that interpersonal difficulty piece to it. So the grenade, it's like, once the pin's out and the fuse is going, nothing's going to stop them. And what you can try to do with this is just try to refocus them back on the task at hand, and say, it's so great that you want to do this cardiac repair, right? But like, let's do what we can to just get this done, and cardiothoracic is going to redo whatever we do now anyway, right? Yes.
I love the idea of if you're having trouble doing it with this, then I'll step in and then we can figure it out later. Taking away their power from.
You can do that, for sure, but just that sense of trying to do the reframe with them is really helpful, and trying to redirect that focus back to the task, because these are the sorts of people who are more about the rage than, we all know it doesn't matter what suture you use as long as they stop bleeding out from that opening in their LV. And it's sort of more about the aggressiveness rather than the task. So redirecting back to the task is definitely helpful.
I've had some success with sort of like maybe aligning myself with them, with blaming the system, sort of saying, I hear you. It's the departmental, it's a system problem. We're out of this suture. Let's just like use what we got and you get through this, and we'll deal with that. Administratively. We'll bring it to a higher level.
I'll make someone pay.
Yeah.
But later. And you know, the think they know it all, it's, you know, the person who is going to let, you know, you know, they have this belief that, you know, of course everyone knows in this textbook that this is the only thing that you can do when we know it's not. And, you know, trying to sort of acknowledge their ideas, but also, you know, give them, you know, give it the hook, so to speak, and get them to move on to the next thing. And again, doing that redirection to say, like, absolutely, but look, this is what we got to work with, and we gotta do something right now, and not escalating the situation by kind of going head to head with what they know is the truth when it necessarily is not. And sort of like the subvariant of the sniper is the person who's also sort of like the attention seeker, where again, it's not about the task so much as they want that acknowledgement of the fact that you're right. You know, it's terrible that we don't have this, and this is, you know, it's great that you're pointing this out, but we got to move on. And the martyr is sort of the person who's going to, again, do that. How do you expect me to work in this situation? You know, I'm here doing everything I can. You know, I worked 36 hours in the last 24 hours, and how? And it's like, you know, I mean, no, you're great, Dr. Smith. Nobody works as hard as you do. I mean, the whole place would fall apart if you weren't here. How could we possibly do this without you? But, you know, I don't know how you deign to work in these situations, but let's just get this done. And so, you know, flattery sometimes goes a long way. So case 3.
All right, everyone, I've got case number 3. So you are the research director for your department, and every month the research faculty gather to discuss potential projects and areas for improvement. All the faculty are engaged in discussion, except for one person who only nods in agreement. So let's think about this in the context of where we are. Who here is on a committee? On some committee, right? Yes, okay. Who here has been on a committee where you've looked around and there's people who are just not responding to anything, they're just kind of there, right? Yes, we've seen that, we've been a part of that, we've seen other members that, and you just see like, okay, are they even there? If there's no face view, I'm like, did they go walk the dog? Did they come back? I got no read on this. Who here has been that person at some point in your life? Where you've been on a committee and you're like, don't ask me. It's like when you're in the middle of this and if I go in and I focus on you and suddenly your phone becomes really interesting and your head goes down, right? We've all been that. We've had that moment. We've felt that, right? Okay. So we can, go ahead. Yeah. Yep, Zoom camera goes off, you go into mute, and you're like, I'm just gonna pretend I'm on mute anyways. I'm here, but you can't see me. It's fine. My daughter does that. She hides behind the couch. I can see her feet, but we just pretend that she's not there, right? We've all kind of experienced that, and we've experienced it both as the person on that end, but on the other end. Oh, that's way faster than I wanted to. All right. So the question is, how do you address that? If you're in that committee, and let's say you're in that leadership role, or you're in a leadership role in that, how do you address and engage that person? What have you tried? What has worked?
I feel like if it's somebody who's hesitant to engage during a meeting, maybe talking to them afterwards and just saying, hey, it seems like you're not fully engaging. Is there some way that like I could help bring you up to speed on something, or kind of talking to them afterwards to see how for the next meeting they could be more involved?
I love that. So I'm going to paraphrase it because I have the microphone over here and it was too far to throw. So you talk with them one-on-one, you connect with them as a person, and you encourage them up. Absolutely. What else?
You can ask their opinions and what they thought about what was presented, and then say, you know, that's like really insightful. Like next time, like feel free to say that to the whole group. I think that we would all benefit from that. So you get their opinion and you encourage.
Spot on. You're taking a moment, you're engaging them into this, you're creating positivity, right? You're saying whatever their opinion was, it could be an okay opinion, but you're like, that was really insightful. It could be insightful to someone. Maybe not you, but to someone in the room. And that's something you're like, yeah, that's great, that's amazing, right?
Yeah, and I kind of plan out ahead of time. So if I know that this person's being disengaged, I'll say their name a couple of times as I'm about to call them, but I give them a long ramp so they can, whatever it is they're doing, they're
like all of a sudden re-engaging and listening with like paying attention. Because there's nothing worse than when I'm in that situation, kind of on my own doing something, and all of a sudden I hear my name, but I wasn't given enough ramp to like re-pay attention.
Chris, that was awesome. Chris, I love that you just did that. Pre-planning on that, Chris, was phenomenal. But no, like seriously, you're linking to a person, right? You're normalizing it. You're naming that exact person to make them feel special and standing out, right? And you're personalizing this back to them, and you're giving them fair warning. Because catching someone on the fly, I'm trying to see if there's someone I can catch on the fly and make super awkward. Doug, I've called you out here. Doug, what do you think about this? How do you feel about this in front of everyone with no prepared planning at all? Exactly, right? It's super uncomfortable. It's not fair. You give them no warning, no pre-planning. Then you're calling them out. And this is that baseline, someone who in this environment, this may not be their baseline in general, but in this environment, probably doesn't feel super comfortable yet to speak out. So I love that. It's pre-building it in. So let's talk about the 3 types of people we got. All right, so again, using our kind of diagram, and I'll caveat this, as has kind of been said and will be carried forward, is that this is a model. It is not the only unique model, and everyone's kind of carried, even now so far, really great ways to build upon this. But we're in this zone of you're either the nothing, the yes, or the maybe in this group. Okay? So there's 3 flavors that exist in this one, and it's a little bit more nuanced than some of the other ones. There's no yelling and screaming. It's the quieter group. So first we got the nothing group. That's the one who says nothing, right? They're just there. They're flat. We don't have a read on them. They're not yes. They're not no. They're not maybe. They're not screaming. I'd rather they be screaming because I know what they want. I have no idea what's going on. And as several of you highlighted, we need to have them feel safe to commit and say, this is what I am. This is what I want. We need to draw it out. And sometimes it's in the group setting of creating a normalcy of a group. Sometimes it's just connecting with them one-on-one, maybe before or afterwards, and saying, hey, it's okay. I want to hear what your opinions are. You're on this committee because I value you. There is a reason you are on this committee and not someone else, because I want you in this group. Connecting with another person, and then they'll bring their opinions out there, and oftentimes these people will bring amazing opinions that they just didn't feel comfortable sharing because they're going to give really good outside or divergent opinions, or maybe they'll just help to support that, yeah, actually everyone this is resonating with everyone, and not just the 3 people in every meeting who always speak the most, right? So that's our nothing group. Then we got our yes person. Who says yes too often? I'm here up on stage. I know I say yes too often. So, but when you say yes too often, right, that we know that if you say yes too often, you're going to overcommit and you won't be able to complete things. And that happens in committees too. Everyone's like, yeah, I want to be on this committee and this committee and this committee and this committee. And then you reflect back, you're like, what do you do on this committee? Oh, nothing. I attended 4 meetings and I had my Zoom camera off and I answer my emails. And like, you have these lines of this, but you didn't get anything out of it. You didn't commit. You didn't join this group, right? So I think similarly, you have to connect with this person and try to then get a commitment. Okay, so for this person who's saying yes, you get their opinions, but you want to know, you will do this by what? You will do what by when, right? A distinct commitment with them. Oftentimes, that one tends to do okay in a big group setting, but if you feel like they're uncomfortable with it or they're not following up on it, then it goes back to one-on-one. Personalize it. Connect with them as a person. Say, Chris, you are doing... I'm just going to keep calling it out that way. But yes, no, like I noticed that we haven't followed up, that I haven't heard back on you since the list of recent objectives. How's that going along? What's going on? Connect, figure out what the barriers are. Maybe there's things going on in their life. Maybe they just need time to come back to it. Figure out where they're at, and then set a goal. Even if it's the opportunity for them to step back on a project, just set a goal for them, something that they can say, okay, we're going to do this by this date. So you have a discrete commitment to it. And the last one is maybe. That's when you look around the room and you say, how do you feel about this? And everyone kind of nods. But if I called any of you out, you'd be like, I don't have another opinion. I just wanted to nod. It felt good to nod. I felt connected. That felt like the appropriate thing to do when you said that statement, right? But it's committing to that because you do have an opinion. Everyone who nods has an opinion. You may not always feel comfortable with it, but we have an opinion. And it goes back to, it's a similarity to nothing. But they're a little bit, it's like the nothing is just a step over. And you're like, okay, they're willing to nod, but they're not willing to say anything else. That's good. That's the first step. They took that first step. Now I'm going to gateway them into having more of an opinion. Capitalize on this because they're giving you that sense of, I want to say something, but I don't feel comfortable yet. Again, build a group that's comfortable and connect with them one-on-one. Give them that safety. Give them that positive affirmation that that their opinion matters.
I'm going to bring it home with case 4. So... case 4. So your department has been mandated by the hospital to open a new fast track area. You are now in faculty meeting and you need to tell the rest of the faculty that this is going to happen. Today is Friday. They would like it to open on Monday. They've already picked out where it will be. And you get absolutely zero say in it. However, guess what? Our lobby is overflowing. There's 60 plus people in the lobby at all times of the day. It looks like a dumpster fire on the regular. Does that sound familiar to anyone right now? All right. So the plan is to open this fast track area to alleviate some of this overflowing lobby so that they can take out some of the things that can be seen and go home. And let's be real, take some dollars. So because this is a last minute decision and the people who are going to end up having to bend over backwards to staff it is going to be the faculty. That's what they have now decided. So the faculty's been asked to staff the area starting on Monday. So a senior faculty member has decided that this is unfair. Is that everybody else's reaction? Because I'm pretty positive that's how that works. This is unfair. He has spoken to everyone he can possibly find to let them know his displeasure with this. He has brought up every complaint that he can possibly think of, from scheduling to space to staffing and everything in between, but hasn't come up with anything to be helpful just yet. And this is going to happen regardless if we like it or not. Is that helpful? No. Does that help the thing get done? No. So, as the chair of the department, how would you address this faculty member? Bueller?
Sometimes when it comes to the most, the biggest naysayer, and the whole group knows who the naysayer is, if you can work with that naysayer and turn him around a little bit, that will turn everybody else. If the naysayer says, all right, this isn't such a bad idea, maybe we should do this, and everyone's like, okay.
Exactly. And I'm going to add a little bit to that. Not only do you get them on your side, but you empower them. Like, you're right, all of those are problems, homie. Co-sign. How are we going to fix that? Because now you've pointed out all the fallacies of this, but we still have to do it. So how are we going to get that done? And so empower them to not only, you know what, you can continue your complaints, actually. I actually like the complaining because that's going to help us make it better. So giving them the power back to try and help you kick the thing down the line. Then there's the other folks that are, I can't believe this is happening to me. This is so unfair. It's like my life is predestined and I don't get a voice in any of this. So those folks, he's also one of those. And so trying to let him know, you know what? You're right. This is unfair. This did happen to us, all of us as a team, not just you. And so together, we're going to have to work to figure out how we're going to make this happen. So how can we band together to make this work out? Because it's not just you going down, it's all of us. So these people, we're giving them under the passive task-focused folks. They're the no people, the whining people, the people who have immediately passed judgment and you are by default guilty, and the meddler. So the one who has all the ideas but no plan to actually help you out. So the whiner. This is the one that feels like everything is happening to them, but they're not in on the plan. But there is a plan. They just don't know about it until the last minute. So these folks, you got to acknowledge that the task is going to have to occur and that it is definitely important that it gets done. I like to side with them and tell them, yep, you're absolutely right. I hear you. I commiserate with all of that. However, besides that, we're going to have to get this thing done. So how do we do that? So encouraging them, you know what? Let's use that energy in a positive way. Let's do X, Y, Z. You know what? What works for you? What would make this better for you? Would snacks make this better? I heard the snacks would make this better. We're going to put snacks up in there. How about you be in charge of the wellness of the fast track area in this arena? And so, how can you bring some positive attention to what has been going on and what's happening to them? Sometimes they buy that, sometimes they don't. But as long as you kind of commiserate with them and they feel like they're not alone, that does generally help. Then there's a person that's decided that no, this isn't happening no matter what. The answer to everything is negative. This is the Eeyore, the person who cannot find the positivity in anything. And so I like to talk to them and redirect them. to actually start thinking about how we're going to fix the problem. So yes, thank you for pointing out all the negative things about this. I am not even going to try to point out the positive things to you because you're not going to hear them. So how can we turn all the negative things you just said into at least neutral? Because let's be real, like you're not going to make them happy about it, but like how can you get them to the point of palatable and not bringing down everybody else? Because that's really the goal, right? So this is the person that you got to be like, yep, agreed. However, like, you know what, you work so hard. I think it would be awesome if you would channel some of that energy into, you know what, looking for the supplies for the fast track area. Can you look upstairs and figure out what things that we need in order to make this better? We're going to put you in charge of thinking of all the things that we might need in order to make this work for us. So, for example, we quickly found out that there's no poster to tell us any of the phone numbers to anything in the hospital in this area because it wasn't a patient care area for us before. And so I put this person in charge of figuring out all the things that we needed. So he made us a nice list of all the phone numbers. So we had a poster now and all of that kind of fun stuff. So he got to channel his energy in another way. He still hates the fast track area, mind you. But now he has something else to focus on as opposed to just focusing on how much he hates it. Then there's the person that's already decided that there's right things and there's wrong things. And by default, you're definitely wrong. And so meeting with them to try and get that judgment dismissed. Like, you know what? I'm not trying to convince you that I'm right, but I do need to convince you that I'm not entirely wrong. So if we can get to the point where you at least acknowledge that this task has to happen and that it is important, well, I've already made a step in the right direction. So acknowledging them, giving them the attention that they need. And then encouraging them to try and also solve the problem. See, are we seeing the theme here? Redirecting their attention and getting them to help you problem solve so that they can feel useful and actually have some buy-in into whatever the problem is generally helpful. These are the people that you need to be overly enthusiastic with about things and generally, if not positive, neutral, because some folks don't really like toxic positivity. Fair enough. I'm one of those. So like neutral sometimes might work a little bit better. And then there's the meddler. You know those folks that like to offer their unsolicited advice on everything? Like you're trying to put in a central line and they walk up and they're like, you know, if you drop that angle just a little bit, and you're like, no one invited you to this conversation. Like, I've got this under, why are you here? So the meddler is the person who likes to give you unsolicited advice. They try to manage you. And so I like to tell those people, like, give them something else to do that doesn't involve talking to me. So, like, for the example of the central line, you know what? Thank you so much for that. Could you go get me insert thing that is in a completely different room so that by the time they come back, I am already done? Try to... Yeah, you know, what else can we help you out with? So trying to redirect them so that they feel like they have a task to do, and hopefully it's something over there and not right here. But we all have those folks that try to meddle in everything that generally muck up the works a little bit more. So giving them a defined task in their own thing also helps.
All right, so what if it's you? What if you're the one that nobody can stand? We've all probably been there, right? Yeah, we've all had those days, right? You just have to figure out where you are on the spectrum and just do it to yourself. Acknowledge, this is why I'm acting up. I'm worried about the task. I'm worrying about getting approval. I'm worrying about getting along. Acknowledge it to yourself, and you'll calm down a little and just pull back. You know, I'm a department chair, so I'm a meddler, like every department chair, right? So I will assign someone a task, and it's not done yet, and I really want it done perfect. And so I just start checking on them, and and I'm driving them nuts, right? And I realize, like, I'm meddling. I just need to say to them, hey, I picked you to do this because I know you're going to get it done great. What can I do to help you? Help me understand what I need to do to make sure this gets done right, because I'm getting nervous, because I'm worried it's not getting done. And it goes great. And if you're that person, because we've all been meddled with by a department chair, right? I mean, that's where they learn it when they're coming up the ranks. Just look at them and say, you are a great boss because you picked me to do this job. I'm perfect for it, and I'm going to have it done, and I will let you know if I need any support from you. And they'll leave you alone. That easy, trust me. And it's probably every chair. So what's the fix for all these things? Like Mike said, this isn't the system. It's just a way to process these kind of situations when you get at them. And I find this kind of approach works really well in those high-stress situations where you're looking for where like the worst thing you can do is to to call out the no person without any acknowledgement that they're getting along, right? Or any of the things, you can go wrong on any one of these if you do the wrong thing. But just keep in the back of your mind, figure out the positive intent. Everybody has some positive intent. It might not be the intent you want, but something they do is positive. Figure out what they value a lot. As you're addressing it, monitor your own tone of voice, especially when you're trying to blend. You don't want to over blend into your own disruptive zone. State your positive intent right away. Like, I want this to go well. And then, this is important to me. This is important to both of us. I can see you're really anxious about this because I know it's important to both of us. Tactfully interrupt interruptions. If you let someone who's being disruptive continue to be disruptive, it won't self-resolve. I think we've all fallen, let's just hear them out. It's not gonna, right? They'll just keep going. So it's okay to interrupt them. When the sniper interrupts you, you can cut them off. And you can, if you want to go right to blending and go right to trying to work with them, but that's okay. And all of us, we all deep down want to be nice and are taught not to interrupt people. This is when it's good. You're doing the person a favor, you're helping everyone in the room. Be honest and be ready to listen. So don't change what's going on. Don't change your reality just to blend with somebody or just to get somebody redirected. Keep it real, and it'll come easily to you, right? You don't have to make anything up because it's just be honest. Like, what do you need here? Where are we going? What do I think's going on? So here they all are. You've got them all memorized. We're going to hand out the quizzes. No, you don't really need to know all the different kinds of bad things. You don't need to know a different approach for every single. If you looked at all the slides in our presentation, it's almost the same one, right? Blend, redirect. And so all you really need to think about is, are they task or people? And are they passive or aggressive? Start with where they are and pull away from it. And people will get better. All right, a couple of quick summarizing statements before we get to a discussion. When people become more controlling, when their intent to get it done is thwarted, are the tanks, snipers, and know-it-alls. So they get more and more controlling, and that's how you can identify that, the aggressive task focus. They get more perfectionistic when their intent to get it right is thwarted. So the people that are passive task focus, it's the whiners, no's, judges, nothing. They become more controlling and perfectionistic when their intent to get it done and get it right is thwarted. So that's all the meddlers, which you probably don't realize how often you get faced that, but that is what's being done to you today. But I'm just kidding. And then it gets more approval seeking when the intent to get along is thwarted. So it's the yeses, the maybes, and the nothing. They're worried about getting along. Tell them everybody likes them. Everybody loves you on this committee. I wish I could hear you talk more. We all really like you. And then behavior becomes more attention seeking when the intent to get appreciated is thwarted. It's the grenades, think they know it all, and snipers. This is a lot of our consultants, right? They want everyone to say they're doing a great job, and isn't it nice that you came into work tonight to help us, even though I'm here every night. And nobody says thank you. Anyway, and then behavior becomes more attention getting and approval seeking when the intent to appreciate it and get along are thwarted. This is the martyrs. This is a lot of those people that drive you crazy, that just everything's a tragedy. It's our patients and our coworkers. You see this one a lot too. So we've got 10 minutes. So questions, thoughts? We're throwing this at you. What do you guys think? Should we work through another case? Let's get another case. Oh.
So it seems that as the attending often, our job is to come in after someone has blown something up and try to put the pieces back. How do you teach this approach to your trainees and to your fellows so that you don't have to always try to put the pieces back together?
That's a fabulous question. You guys want to go?
Simple, straightforward.
I mean, just in general, I think the first step of this is also helping the people on the front line understand that, like, when you get loggerheads with people, that you have to take a step back, that the person who is maladapting to their situation in one of these ways, they're not a bad person. And sometimes it's like people get so like wound up, and it's like, they're such a jerk. They did this to me. How could they do that? I hate them. And it's like, but once they get to that point, there's no way to sort of unring the bell. And I think it's really helpful to remind people, it's like, look, who knows what was going on that got them to this point,
And they're not yelling at you like they're your mom. You know, like take a step back and understand that this is a good person with a bad behavior as opposed to just always a bad person, because rarely in healthcare is it just a straightforward bad person. And so just encourage them to say, like, look, don't get wound up in this. Don't get pulled down in the mud with them. Just take a step back and, like, be curious. Ask the question, like, what's going on here? And all of these strategies come from saying, like, what's going on here, and trying to have a little bit of separation from the behavior that's happening.
And as I look at this from like the learner level, I think there's 3 stages we can approach this. So first one is full-on prevention. And that's just teaching them, right? We're learning here today. There's no way they would know this unless we teach this. And yes, we can give them a lecture, but ultimately this is great for SIM. Have them actually model this, try this out before they have a patient that encounters this. Go through that. Ideally, have them SIM against each other. A, because it's cheaper, but B, because they can then actually see what it's like on being on the other end of it. They can experience that, right? That could be done during a conference session with 0 cost. You just block off and have them do kind of dyadic sims or small group sims. So I think we could do that well in advance. I think you set your culture at the start of your shift. A portion of the start of my shift, including my like learning expectations and my normalizing growth mindset stuff, is we are taking care of people. They are not going to always be happy because they're here. They're here because something bad happened. They're not here because they wanted to start their day in the ED. And setting this normalization of like, let's just put ourselves in each other's shoes. When we feel like there's an interaction that's not going great, when we feel like there's something that we're not connecting with them, step back and remember there's a person on the other end of this, and what we get to do is pretty damn cool. We get to take care of people at their worst and make them better. And we need to remember that for every patient, no matter what the situation is. And normalizing this, right? You normalize at the start of your shift before they get an interaction. And then if it happens, then you have a good time to debrief, and with good approaches, don't debrief right when they're heat in the moment, when they're really angry. That's when you as the attending come in and you resolve it. You resolve with the patient. Then you talk to the resident. You use it as a learning opportunity. You say, listen, I've been there. Normalize it, right? Growth mindset. We've been there. I've learned it. Here's what I've learned. Here's a strategy I found. And before we even do that, find out what their perception was, right? What did you experience? What were you thinking? What was your experience? Okay, let me share with you some of mine. Tell me if it resonates with you. What do you think? Have an actual discussion with them, right? But the more we approach it, prevention, set your tone, and then use it as a reflective opportunity, I think the more we can start to change that culture at a more broad scale, and the less that will happen more frequently.
And you guys bring up such good points. And modeling behavior is so important. And I think a lot of pep talks, because you have to realize this is the most stressful thing that happens to us to work, as proven yesterday. I wish we had that data last fall in our submission. That would have been, well, we got it. But anyway, we know this is stressful. We all know that when somebody burns out and you ask me, like, I can't get yelled at by another drug seeker. I can't have another consultant refuse an admission. I just can't do it. I'm just tired of it. That's what gets us tired. And we have to support one another. I mean, think about our jobs. Like, we're asked to, for a living, stare into other people's nightmares with them, right? I mean, that's what we do. And so we have to kind of think of it as this is part of our therapeutic goals, right? We have to learn how to tie a knot with one hand. We have to learn how to manage somebody when they're at their worst, because it's what we do. And honestly, I find that having that attitude makes it easier. So I don't think like, this guy's yelling at me. I think this person's really nervous and upset right now, and I'm going to manage it, rather than I'm having a fight with this person. And if you get in that mindset, that depersonalizes it, but it makes it more just like, it stinks sometimes when you do a rectal exam, right? I mean, it's just not fun. And it hurts sometimes to go into these fights. You're going into fights. To go in these, when you're disrupting with someone, you just have to think, I'm fixing the problem here. This is what I'm doing. Other questions? Yes. Yes, please.
So one of the things I think over the last Catherine Tyler from UC Davis. One of the things that's been interesting over the last few years is really watching how people manage or don't manage meetings. And I think, your case in particular spoke to, but I think setting the expectations early if you're running the meeting, but questions for how do you manage up when somebody, like, there's no agenda, there's nothing, it's like no follow-up, how do we learn that as physicians?
Well,
Since it's my case, I guess I'll lead this off. I think you start with the mantra of praise publicly, critique or give feedback privately. So I think if you highlight the things they're doing well publicly, so it's very clear. Like, I thought you did a great job of starting the meeting off on a good tone. I appreciate you sent a reminder email before this that got everyone on the same page and remind us of the meeting. I think you did a great job of this thing. And then separately, you have conversations of things in there. For example, I noticed during the meeting, it didn't seem like we had a clear focus until about 2/3 of the way through. And first, I like to ask them, like, what are your thoughts about that? Give them a chance to give their thoughts, because no one wants to be given advice, right? Then we become the person on the list again of, let me give you a whole bunch of unsolicited advice and then micromanage you and see how well this goes. And then they're going to have to, then it goes full on 360 because then they have to manage us. And so I think we have to give them the opportunity to say, like, what was their thoughts? What was their perception of that? And they may have some really good insights of ways we could do things better. Or they may say, you know what? No one ever told me how to do these things. And then that opens the door, and then they're going to be more open to the feedback of saying, how about next time we create an agenda? You can create a draft, and we can work on it together so it's comfortable before you send it out. But do that as a one-on-one, calling back to some great suggestions from multiple people in the audience of, just have that one-on-one personal connection with them, help mentor them up, and figure out where they're at. Thoughts from anyone else?
I think those are really good thoughts. And even like right during the meeting, sometimes it's really hard. And I think it's because sometimes a group leader will get to that maybe zone. And they're a little unsure, especially at a place like this where everybody here is an accomplished teacher pretty much, right? So it's like you're feeling nervous. I usually let me just take a second to thank you for having this meeting. And I didn't mean to interrupt. What should we talk about next? Kind of like give them acknowledge that everybody likes them, get them some appreciation, and then kind of task focus them right then and there. Like, what would you like us to talk about right now? Just, on a really specific end.
Sometimes I find it helpful to make it not so much about them and make it about me, which that way it's me that's the problem and not them. So not having an agenda, it's I could be so much more effective to help you in this meeting if I knew what we were talking about in advance. Or make it so that there's a way I can kind of help you along, as opposed to it being a criticism of kind of how they're doing things, depending on kind of what their personality type is.
I'm such a space case. If I get that follow-up email, even just minutes, it'll just keep me on focus, and I'll be able to do that stuff that you mentioned during the meeting. The meeting was great. I get so scattered.
It's super common. And I can tell you now that I'm far into my career that I learned most of what I know about managing people because I was managing up. Because I had difficult people telling me what to do, and I needed to get them out of my way. And it works the same. You figure out what are they focused on, are they worried about what we're getting done here? Are they worried about getting attention for it? Are they being passive about it? And you can use the same techniques, and it kind of flows both ways. It's easier when you're managing the person because you can be more directive. But don't worry about managing up. Understand that whenever anybody's managing you, they totally rely on you because you're doing all the work for them. They have to do it themselves if you don't do it. So it's the power differential seems like they're in control, but especially, you can only rent somebody's medical skills. You can't buy them, right? You're still the doctor, and they all they can do is convince you to work for them. So you've got the power. You just got to kind of nicely remind them of that sometimes, right? Well, we're right about at time. So this has been a lot of fun. Thank you so much for coming, and have a great conference. Great to be here.